because I understood so much more about myself and how I was reacting, about overstimulation, all of that, it was like all of those symptoms got 10 times worse because now I was aware. And now I was kind of zooming in on all of those things. So I very much remember specifically one party that we had a party at my place, and I felt normal, everything was fine. And then just out of nowhere, suddenly it was like a switch turned in my head. It felt so aggressive, like it was really shattering in my mind. And I just felt that I had to get out of the situation. I could not cope anymore.
Thank you for joining the Free Time Mastermind podcast. This is your host, Robert Gaines. Today's guest is Diana Grace, a business coach focusing on female entrepreneurs. During this episode, we talk about neurodivergence, hypnotherapy, and Carl Jung's shadow work. Here's Diana. Well, thank you for joining us, Diana. Where are you calling in from?
Thank you. I'm calling in from Norway.
And what time is it there right now?
It's a bit past 3 p.m. in the afternoon. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. It's 9 a.m. here in Florida on the East Coast. And I had saw you do an interview with somebody else, and I was really taken by the exchange of information between you and the other host. And I apologize. I can't remember her name. Can you, do you remember the name of the lady? Go ahead.
Yeah, Edita.
Adita. Okay. Very good. And she's getting her podcast started as well. Looks like she shot a lot of content, and I thought that was really good. One of the things that I noticed also on your website is you mentioned neurospicy. Can you walk us through that and explain that?
Yes. So the correct term is neurodivergent, but neurospicy is what a lot of people use as a slang term, especially on TikTok. And I started using it just because to make the term more fun and relatable for some people. Some people don't like the term, but some people feel that it's kind of empowering because a lot of people find that their neurodivergence feels very limiting, very negative in a way, but using the term neurospicy feels more fun and empowering because there are things that are awesome with being neurodivergent.
And it seems like they're finding out now that there's a great many people that have neurodivergence, and it could be on a spectrum. You know, we spoke before about different tests and exams and the different ways it can affect you. So how is that a part of what you provide as a coach?
Yeah, so neurodivergence definitely is a spectrum, and there are many different kinds of neurodivergence. We have ADHD, we have autism, we have OCD, bipolar disorder, even Down syndrome, and some other kinds of either disabilities or disorders or some kind of, how can I say it, personality trait in a way that fall in under this term neurodivergence. So it's a way that your brain is wired differently, and you see the world in a different way, and there are different ways that the symptoms show up in your body. And how I help people in my business with that is that I'm neurodivergent myself, and I can understand that there are a lot of challenges that comes with being that, and especially in a society where that society is very much catered to neurotypicals. A lot of neurodivergents feel very left out and that something is wrong with them. So a lot of neurodivergents, they start to feel that they're not accepted in the society, that they feel left out, that something is wrong with them. And so then a lot of neurodivergents tend to develop anxiety, depression, very low self-esteem, self-worth, self-confidence, and just a lot of problems in their day-to-day life, in work, etc. So my work very much consists in helping especially female entrepreneurs who are neurodivergent to feel empowered and confident so that they can really speak up about their opinions, amplify their voice so that they can really make the biggest impact that they can make in the society and helps as many people as possible.
Fantastic. I think that people with neurodivergence, and you can confirm this, it's almost like, we have the predominant number of people on Earth are right-handed, but there are a lot of people that are left-handed. But most devices, because the majority of people are right-handed, are designed for right-handed people.
Yeah.
Although people that are left-handed don't feel like they're necessarily apart from society, they do run into issues where there's a lack of fit the way something is designed. It's designed for a right-hand world. And someone described to me that neurodivergence is almost like being in a room that was designed for someone who is 8 foot tall and your regular height. And, so everything is kind of in different places from where you would choose to have it. And you mentioned in the other podcast, Grind to Grace, about mimicking, which I'll let you talk about that, because I think the way you described that was really fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that that's a very interesting example that you mentioned there. I like that. And mimicking is something that in the neurodivergent society is often called masking. And what that is about is that when you grow up and you look around you and you feel that something is different, but you just can't point at what it is because you don't know anything different, right? Like you just know how it feels like to be you. But you look around you and you feel different and you see these other people who are neurotypicals without knowing that at the time. And you see that they seem to be doing very well in life. And they seem to be getting friends. They seem to be getting good grades. And they seem to not struggle as much as you feel like you are internally, right? So you want to be that same way. You want to have friends. Maybe you struggle getting friends, for example. And so you think that, okay, in order for me to feel like I'm succeeding in life, whether it's friends or grades or whatever, I need to be like them, and them being the neurotypicals. So what you start doing is that you start observing them, everything that they're doing, their body language, their tone of voice, how they act, just everything about them. You start mimicking them. And so then you're suppressing what your authenticity really is. You start suppressing your actual thoughts, opinions, the way that you act and the way you want to use your body language. So you just start mimicking them, you start masking just to be accepted by other people and be liked. So yeah, that's essentially it, especially when you're younger.
You talked about mimicking, and of course, in the autistic community, they talk about masking, which is pretty much the same thing. You're putting on the face like everybody else, so that you fit in, even though you might feel the urge to be very, very, very different. But we have to get through the day. We have to get through society, and it's a coping mechanism. But also, too, even though masking can potentially get you through the day, there are a lot of people that I'm trying to think of the proper word, not necessarily coping, but people people abuse substances also to deal with that. So have you seen where people are dealing with ADHD outside of the regular pharmaceutical cures, where they're dealing with alcohol and drugs and things just to try to feel normal, or to kind of push down that feeling of almost like alienation?
Yeah, absolutely. That's very, very common with people with neurodivergence. And it's usually when they have been undiagnosed for most of their life, for example, and they, again, just thought they were different without knowing exactly what it was. But they had this very busy minds, for example, and it's just something what just felt off, and they just needed something to feel normal or to shut down some kind of thoughts or feelings. So they started self-medicating kind of with, for example, drugs or alcohol or nicotine, just something to get through the day and shut down something within them.
Can you talk us through when you first realized that you had some neurodivergence, and what that diagnosis was like, and how you dealt with that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because it's not that long ago
Mm.
that whole process happened for me because I always knew I was different. I always knew there was something, but I thought that I was just shy and introverted and weird, right? And so I first thought that I was a highly sensitive person around, I think it was 3 or 4 years ago. So I thought that for about 2 years. And then I think 2 years ago, that's when I started realizing that maybe there's something else. So that was when my process started with looking into what that something else could be. And then I went to the doctor, I went through the whole process, and then recently I actually got the ADHD diagnosis. But I've kind of known for over a year, but I just recently got it officially.
And did you opt for, are you just using that now as an understanding and you're now making some changes and learning more about it? Or did you have any interest in medication? Because I know some people have Adderall and that's very popular here in the United States. And I've seen it actually
Yeah.
work quite well on people.
Yeah, both. I recently started trying. I'm still in the tryout with
Okay.
medication, but I'm using non-stimulant medication though. But yeah, so that has definitely started to help me. But at the same time, yeah, like you said, just to have a bigger understanding of
Mhm.
myself, and it's just helping me to, you know, uh, tackle life in a different way, relearn some things. But I'm happy that because I thought that I was a highly sensitive person a couple of years ago, that's when the actual process of thriving with my sensitivity and relearning some things really started. So I've been in that kind of process for a while with mindset and with be feeling more empowered within myself. That has been going on for longer.
And it's interesting. There's some similarities there because I've been told over time that I'm sensitive about certain things. And me being a man, I don't, we really generally don't like being called that word. And I was in the army, I've been around explosions, I worked in a level 5 trauma center. I've been around some really, really wild, intense situations. And I was like sensitive. But one of my things is sounds. So when
Mm.
I'm out anywhere, I always have headphones on. Now that's been more so in the last couple of years. So I'm always listening to an audiobook usually. And because noises in general are fine, but repetitive noises, I just and I thought to myself as I'm going through, as I'm getting more, I'm looking around at everybody else. Nobody else is getting upset, and I'm like, that sound needs to stop. And I'm thinking, am I crazy? Am I just
Mm.
overly sensitive? I mean, in a way, neurologically, I am, but there's nothing wrong with me, so to speak. It's just I need to use a different strategy than the other people that can hear that jackhammer go on for 3 straight hours and not uh, pay any mind to me. Like it has to stop. So,
Yep, I
or I have to
agree.
get away. I have to get away from it. So and so yeah, almost always you see me out somewhere at the grocery store. I have headphones on, and I have
Yeah.
them. I have these ones now that don't go inside the ear, so I can hear what's going on around me if somebody needs to interact with me or whatever. But yeah, most of the time there's always some kind of sound going on. But people sleep that way too. I know a lot of people that are not on the spectrum. They need a fan blowing on their face. They need some ambient sounds in the background, but nobody's calling them crazy.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I can definitely relate to that because I've also been super sensitive to sound my whole life, but especially the past couple of years. Now, on the medication that I'm taking, I'm actually less sensitive to sound, which is pretty cool. So I
Wow.
feel more
Okay.
robust. But other than that, yeah, definitely, especially on airports, at cafes, in very like bustling
Sure.
environments. So I've definitely used my fair share of noise canceling headphones and, in-ear buds and stuff. And I often have to sleep with those, I don't remember what it's called, but the kind of the buds that you put in. So definitely.
I was recently in a situation where there was a bunch of people in a small room and we worked together for, I think, almost 2 months. And I mean, elbow to elbow, a room full of people. And when I walked in and saw that's how it was laid out, I don't panic very often, but I thought, oh no. people chewing gum, and I knew it was going to be just, I knew it was going, it was an absolute nightmare. So I got, there's a pair of headphones over there. I won't pick them up, but they should be a sponsor. But anyway, they're noise canceling. Plus I was able to interact with the clients on the computer. But previously in the industry that I work in, we always work in cubicles. And that's fine. But I mean, it was just a situation where they didn't have anywhere else to put us, and we were elbow to elbow. And it was, I would take lunch and I would just go outside and walk around the building to try to ease down that tension that all of that stimulation was causing. So before your diagnosis, were you having any moments like that where you were thinking, this is I'm feeling a really intense in a situation that other people weren't normally feeling intense in?
Definitely. And I was kind of laughing while you were speaking about that because I had so many memories coming to mind. And it's weird because before I started realizing that I thought that I was highly sensitive, I can't really remember moments where I felt like that, but I think that I was just kind of blind to those kinds of moments because I probably were super irritated and frustrated, and maybe I lashed out or maybe I shut down in some way. I don't know, but I wasn't aware that I was overstimulated. So it was just not something that came to mind. But then I started learning more about high sensitivity back then. And then because I understood so much more about myself and how I was reacting about overstimulation, all of that, it was like all of those symptoms got 10 times worse because now I was aware, and now I was kind of zooming in on all of those things. So I very much remember specifically one party that we had a party at my place, and this was very shortly after realizing all of these things, and I was having a lot of fun until maybe 11 o'clock in the evening. And I felt normal, everything was fine. And then just out of nowhere, suddenly it was like a switch turned in my head. And suddenly the music and the sounds, everything was 10 times louder. And it felt so, I don't know what the word, but it felt so aggressive. Like it was really shattering in my mind. And I just felt that I had to get out of the situation. I could not cope anymore. So I just had to go into the bathroom and close my eyes and really just take a couple of breaths. But then I felt like my night was ruined. My night was over. I needed people to go home and I just wanted to go to bed. And that was so crazy to me to have that experience because I had never experienced that before. And then after some time, I did learn how to cope with it. I learned how to prevent against those kinds of situations. But that was so eye-opening for me to have that experience.
And your tank was full. So it seems
Yes.
like the tank will slowly fill up,
Yep.
and we don't get a very strong signal. It's almost like having a big dinner. You're very hungry, you're eating, you're enjoying it, and then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I'm full. This is too much." And
Yeah.
but you don't get much of a notice before you hit the ceiling of that limit of the tank of stimulation that you can take. But I would assume now that you're much more aware of when you're reaching that threshold of when you're like, I got it, it's time to step outside.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, now I know way before that happened. So now I can really prevent against it and take it down a notch before getting to that place. But before, yeah, I definitely did not get much notice until it was way too much.
When you decided to become a coach, a lot of people that I talk to, whether they're like even the people that came on, the great people from Attorney Shield, which created an app for the iPhone, which was that was a fantastic episode. And how they started was completely different. They didn't come together and said, we're going to build an app for iPhone. They were working on a completely different project. And I see that very consistently among entrepreneurs. Where they start is usually not where they end up. And even what you're doing now might be completely different 3 years from now. But can you explain to me where that journey started? And did you immediately say, yes, this is coaching, and it was a straight line from point A to point B? Because I would guess it probably wasn't, but we'll see.
Correct. I did. Well, at the very beginning of my entrepreneurial journey, I didn't even intend to start a business. This was in the beginning of COVID, of course, like so many other people. And where I was, I had some extra time, and I've always been a person who liked to share, especially knowledge. When I learn something really, really interesting, and I want to share it with people, right? I want to help. And this was no different. But I've always been into mental health and psychology, personal development, all of that. And in the beginning of COVID, I started sharing content, especially on Instagram, about mental health to help other people who were also struggling in that period of time. So that's where it started. And then I stumbled upon a post from another content or online course creator where she talked about you can create a course and yada, 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 but as a coach, and you can help people. And that really intrigued me. So at this point, I didn't have a business yet, but that intrigued me. And I messaged her because I was so intrigued. But I said, I'm not a coach. Like, can I do this? And then she talked me through some things. And I realized, you know what? I can help people, although I don't have the coaching certification yet. Like, I can still help people. So I decided then, okay, I'm going to start a business. I'm going to help people for real. And that's where the coaching business started. But in the beginning, I helped highly sensitive people with embracing their sensitivity, with thriving in life, with feeling more empowered, letting go of people-pleasing tendencies, and preventing against overstimulation. So that's where it started. And I taught a lot of nervous system regulation. I created a course about that and all of that. And then 1 year later, that's when I wanted to pivot, because I also have a marketing degree. So I wanted to pivot to more business coaching. So in the beginning, I helped highly sensitive people with business, but it was more strategy focused. And now, not so long ago, I did a mini pivot again to focus more on the mindset aspect in business. So now it's much more mindset and subconscious rewiring, shadow work, and all of that, and even hypnosis. So yeah, it's been a journey with several pivots.
I'm glad you said the shadow, because I had that on as you see, I glanced at my notes here to the left. That was something that, and I don't want to offend the Americans watching this, but the European education system, I've had a lot of Europeans on the show, even though I've only had 20 episodes. I think at minimum, I've had a quarter of them either have some kind of very recent European roots, where they grew up there, lived there, maybe from the U.S., or people from, and two of them are from the Netherlands, and that was an accident. And part of that has to do with, as I'm looking for guests, I try to watch them do other interviews like I did for you. And when you were talking from grind to grace, although you didn't mention it specifically, I could tell that you were talking about the work of Carl Jung. And I thought, wow, that's, I could live 3 years and have conversations here over the course of the next 3 years, kind of in rooms of business, and I would never hear Carl Jung come up. And again, I don't want to beat up the Americans, but there's just not that rigorous academic intellectual interest at that depth. There's a lot of people here that read a lot of great books and they're very well educated, but Carl Jung, his work is so important, and it was so groundbreaking at the time and still so relevant today. I was just blown away that you almost casually mentioned it. I thought, wow, that's incredible. So can you educate our audience about the shadow and a little bit about how you use Carl Jung's work?
Yeah, definitely. So shadow work is very, very interesting. We all have shadows as human beings, and shadows are essentially the parts of ourselves, the sides of us that we not always know that we have at a very conscious level. Sometimes it's conscious, sometimes it's subconscious, but those are the parts of ourselves that we don't necessarily want the world to see because we are maybe shameful about them. We are maybe embarrassed about them. And so we try to hide those parts of ourselves. And an example that I like to mention is that, let's say, for example, as a child, you were just a normal child with a lot of energy, you had a lot of enthusiasm, and you like to chat, you like to take up space and play and have fun, right? But maybe your parents told you that you had to be quiet, you're taking up so much space, you have to take it down a notch and not all of that. And maybe they even told you you are too much, right? So after hearing that a couple of times, you start internalizing that, okay, maybe I am too much. Maybe I need to take it down a notch. And so that followed you throughout your childhood, your teenage years, your youth, your adulthood. And so you become a grown up, and then you always have that part of you, that voice that tells you, Don't be too much, take it down a notch, you know? So when you're in a relationship, for example, then you don't really want to express your opinions about day-to-day things like what you're gonna have for dinner, for example, or where you should go on a date, for example, because you don't want to be too much. You don't want to express too much. And when you're in a meeting, you don't really want to speak up because what if other people have better opinions than you? You don't want to be too much. And even in business, that follows you as well, where you know that you quote unquote should be expressing your opinions and take up space. But because you have that ingrained in you that you shouldn't take up too much space, you shouldn't be too loud, then that's very hard for you because that's so ingrained. And then maybe one day someone tells you, hey, you have so many opinions, don't you? And then that was not a bad intention at all to say that. It was just maybe said jokingly, but then you internalize that and you're like, oh no, you see my shadow. This is a danger alert in my nervous system. And so you get offended because you think that exposed you in a way. And so either you lash out, or you internalize it, and you think, oh no, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy enough in some way because your shadow has been exposed. But it was just a harmless comment, but that really shed a light on your shadow. So I don't know if I explained that properly, but
Yes, yeah.
that's essentially what shadow work or shadows are about.
Yeah, I think we're very afraid of how society thinks we should speak and live, and you've talked about it separately in other formats, especially your podcast. There's for women, there's an extra layer on top of that, isn't there? You know, there are these expectations of how women are supposed to be in the boardroom or in meetings, and so you've got even another societal layer of masking on top of dealing with the shadow. And I think you've spoken about that. And for the men in the audience, can you enlighten them a little bit about that extra difficulty that you deal with in a business situation?
Yes. And I don't know if you had that in mind, but something that I talk a lot about is feminine and masculine energy. And that's something that really shows up in the workplace as well, where, in a boardroom, for example, as a woman, you are supposed to be more masculine to be respected, that you have to be this super authoritative person with a lot of power to just be respected. You shouldn't be too sensitive, for example. You shouldn't be too um kind, nurturing. I don't know. You have to kind of, again, mask and mold yourself to be someone else in order to be respected. So that's where the authenticity comes in again. And, yeah, you can do that to some extent. You don't want to necessarily just neglect that, because maybe you want to have a higher position, maybe you want to be respected by the other people, you want to get further in your career. But I would say be aware of how you show up, where you do a little bit of that, but keep having your authenticity, right? Keep being aware of, okay, how am I going on a chord of who I want to be at my core, if that makes sense.
Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned hypnotherapy, and I think your latest episode on your podcast is actually you have a hypnotic induction, which I listened to some of it, but I didn't want to go into a trance. But obviously, hypnotherapy has shown some great transformations for people, and it's a great alternative to medication as well. There's kind of a resurgence in interest in neurolinguistic programming, which is related to hypnotherapy. When did you discover that as a tool?
Actually, about 1 year ago or something. So that's also pretty recent. And I've had my own business journey where as I said, I've always been into mindset and personal development, all of that. But I didn't realize how much of my business challenges were rooted in mindset still, although I was very interested in that. I didn't realize that I had many limiting beliefs myself, and things in my subconscious that were hindering me in seeing the success that I wanted, especially in my own money mindset, for example, because I grew up with hearing all of these statements about money that were really not serving me. So I had to really, really go into that myself. I had, for example, I mentioned in the other podcast that I grew up with probably a narcissistic father, and that I learned to people please a lot. And so, because I was such a people pleaser, then I was so good at always giving to others, but it was so hard for me to receive, even if it was just a compliment or a gift or anything, but also money. And in business, you want to be able to receive money, right? And ask for money and all of that. So I had so much that I needed to work on. I had so much anxiety around money, all of that. So at one point, I realized, okay, I need to go deeper beyond just the conscious work that I was doing. So that's when I randomly found hypnotherapy. I listened to a track on someone's podcast at first, and I got hooked immediately. And then I reached out to a hypnotherapist that helped me on my money mindset and money anxiety. And especially with one of the biggest things that was in that hypnosis was to reduce my anxiety when I was logging into my bank account. So my anxiety at the beginning of that was at a maybe 9. And through listening to that hypnosis track several times over a span of, I think it was 30 days or something. So sometimes people just need one time to listen to something. Sometimes it's 7 days, 14 days, 30 days. For me, it was so deep, and I don't have the ability to visualize because I have aphantasia, so it takes longer for me. But yeah, so I had to listen to it for about 30 days, and then my anxiety level went down from around 9 to around between 0 and 2. So it was profound, the effectiveness. So then I was, okay, if this can work so well, I wonder what else it can help me with. And then I was so obsessed that I decided to learn hypnotherapy myself, because I just found it so cool. So I wanted to do it both for myself so that I could hypnotize myself, but also so that I could help even more people through this work, because I'm so passionate about subconscious work. So I just wanted to go a level deeper and help even on an even deeper base level.
And help us understand, what is aphantasia? And then I have a follow-up question after that.
Yeah. So there's also a spectrum or a scale to say where people can visualize in varying degree. People who visualize very clearly where they can, if I tell you to close your eyes and imagine a bird, like I could ask you, how clearly can you see that bird? People who can see it so clearly that it's almost like 4K or HD, it's so clear, they have aphantasia. And then some people can just vaguely see that bird, just very vague, and their mind tries to fill it in those gaps, right? Then maybe they have hypophantasia, so it's very, very down there. And then you have aphantasia, which I have, where you can see nothing. It's just black. So yeah.
For you, when you coach people and you help people, you've also had mentors. And I try to bring up the important role of mentors, the important role of finding your tribe, so to speak. This is my people, where you can find a group of people that you feel very comfortable around, that you can drop the mask. But I'd like to start with the mentors first. When did you first start to reach out to people, and which ones made the most impact as far as getting you started on the journey?
I started hiring people very early on in my business. Well, the first hire, so to say, was an online course. It wasn't really hiring a mentor, but from the very beginning, I started looking for help outside of myself. But I think it was after half a year or something, that's when I hired my first mentor one-to-one. Yeah, so throughout my whole business journey, I've always had someone to help me. And I would say that there has been pros and cons to it. I am definitely very thankful that I invested in myself and in the business all of those times, and I've learned so much. But I needed to also learn the lessons of not always looking for external permission and validation all of the time, because I needed to trust and learn to trust my own intuition and my own empowerment and all of that. So that has been a journey in itself. But yeah, I've worked with mentors and in group programs and all of that all of the time throughout my business journey.
And membership with, obviously you're building your own community as a coach. And on the website I saw there that I think you were using Teachable. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Now, why would you use Teachable versus some of the other platforms? Did that seem like the best fit for the information that you were providing? And I bring that up because there are other entrepreneurs that watch this that are thinking about maybe getting into the coaching space or the teaching space. So I always like to discuss the different software options and why are people choosing Kajabi versus Teachable versus School versus, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I switched over from Kajabi to Teachable because I just think that Kajabi is a little bit too costly in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So Teachable was just a cheaper alternative. But I chose Teachable over other kinds of platforms because I really like that you have almost everything that you need in one place. It's good for hosting both courses and different kinds of digital products. And I think it's good for building out your website and everything. So I just like that it's kind of all in one, and I'm happy with it.
And outside of the community that you're building for your brand, are you a member of anybody else's community where you can go and kind of be amongst your tribe, so to speak, and where would that be? Because I know I'm the Facebook generation. So, when people talk about Instagram, I can already know that they're probably a little bit younger than me because Instagram's fantastic, but obviously the demographic is a little bit different there. So are you involved in any groups on any of the various platforms?
Kind of. I am into different programs right now, and there are communities in both of them. One of them is on Kajabi, and the other one is a bit on Kajabi and a bit on Facebook. I haven't really included myself too much in those communities right yet because I don't feel that they're as kind of tight-knit and personal. But I just graduated from a 1 year long group mastermind, and there was a very tight-knit community. So
Okay,
I'm
great.
no longer in that, but I have friends from there that I still speak with. So I feel that there's kind of some sense of community there still.
And this has never been brought up in any of this. This will be episode 21, and I don't think this has come up at all, although I should have probably asked several guests this. We all have personal friends, and we have some friends that are entrepreneurs, but then of course we've got a lot of people that, they're not interested in owning their own business. Um, how do you deal with that in interpersonal relationships between your kind of your business side friends and your personal relationships? Because I guess I sense a little frustration sometimes because certain things I'm going through, I know that, my buddy who is a plumber, for instance, he's not going to really understand the problems I'm having with the marketing and branding. And I mean, we still have a great relationship, but yeah, sometimes it's tough shifting between those different interpersonal relationships. I guess it really almost kind of gets back into a work-life balance. So what's your approach towards that?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And I think that that is very important for people, for business owners, entrepreneurs to be aware of that it's important to have friends who are also entrepreneurs, who are business owners, who really get it. Because I have both family and friends who are so supportive. They love me. They are so happy that I'm having a business that I'm thriving in and all of that. And even my boyfriend, who has some entrepreneurial experience himself, he supports me, he understands a lot of it, but he still cannot understand the full scope of what I'm doing because his experience wasn't from the coaching industry. It wasn't from, for example, selling on Instagram, all of that. So even though I have so much support from them, I still need entrepreneur friends, other business owners who fully understand it because the amount of mindset work that you have to go through, it's insane. So I think that it's super, super important, and not just but having the full support in that, but also just seeing that there are other powerhouses, like we like to call it, that really go after their dreams fully, and they show you what's possible, right? So that kind of keeps you a bit accountable, where you're like, okay, if they did it, then I can do it. Then maybe I'm not dreaming big enough. Maybe I should dream bigger and fully go after my goals, go all in. So yeah, it's super important to have both. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And of course, a shout out to all my friends that are in the trades. Right now, some of them are doing much better financially than my internet-based entrepreneur friends. So I didn't want to make it seem like I was trying to naysay plumbers. They're doing very, very well. And of course, one thing that I like about the trades is at the end of the day, they can visually see the transformation. So whether it be coaching, somebody getting a surgical procedure, or they're going through hypnotherapy, once people's basic needs are met. So of course, we're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but pretty much once you've got, air conditioning, heating, and you have that food and comfort, almost everything above that, we're seeking transformation in some way, shape, or form. We also have a fascination with seeing transformation. If you read a book, those characters are going through a journey and they're not the same at the end of the book as the beginning. Same thing with a good film. You're watching, when we talk about the character arc, we're talking about that person being transformed, the hero's journey. And in trades, you have people that can build a building and they can point, that building at C Street and 33rd, I built that. You see those windows? I was the glazing expert that put. So there's this beauty in the trades where they can point to these things and they can show the transformation that they were involved in. That was a parking lot before, and now it's this beautiful structure. And I see people in the artistic endeavors that also have this strong sense of wanting to create. They'll take a piece of stone and turn it into a face, or people that is an oil painter, they convert a canvas to a beautiful lake. So, and I'm sure your clients too, when they come to you, they're ultimately seeking some form of change.
Yeah, very, very true. I love the examples that you brought in, and it made me think about when I watch a film or a series. I love when I can see the development, the transformation in the people. And it sometimes even makes me emotional. Like, have you seen The Good Doctor? I think that's what it's called.
That's a TV show, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen little clips, but I've not seen a whole episode, because that's a doctor
Mm.
who's on the spectrum. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, correct.
Oh, okay.
So, of course, you there are like so many different kinds of people on the spectrum, and he is just one person. So not everything is as you can see in the series and all of that, just as a disclaimer for people listening and viewing. But I could really see the transformation that he went through from season to season, where in the
Okay.
beginning, all of the social situations that he was in, they were so hard for him and there were so many obstacles. And then you can see from season to season that he's growing so much and he's able to get a relationship and
Oh,
friendships.
wow.
And you can just see that he's really, really developing. And just the transformation, like so I can get very emotional when I watch TV series. And when I could see that he overcame an obstacle in a social setting, that made me cry because I was like, yes, you did it. So yeah, I love that so much. And I think that when, especially in business, people are so often focused on just the end result, on just rushing to get to a place where they can reach their goals and have all their financial milestones met and all of that. But I think that's something that you pointed out there is to get in love with the process and see, okay, is this giving me meaning? Is this giving me fulfillment? And you get that from those transformations, the transformations in within yourself and within your clients. And so I forgot what your question was. Sorry.
No, no, that's perfect. And you hit on something there at the very end that I wanted to tie into. You had alluded to it earlier, but for you and your business, what is the ideal client? Because you said you had a recent pivot in your business and in your focus. Who would be the ideal client for you right now? So if somebody listening to this fits this criteria, who do you feel like you can bring the most transformation and change to?
Yeah, definitely those people who are either newer to business or have been there for a little bit while, and they have been so focused on the strategy, trying to find the secret key on just overly focusing on messaging, marketing, and all of that. And they are starting to realize that maybe the problem is not in the strategy, in the framework, and what you can see. Maybe I should actually look more into my own limiting beliefs, my own shadows, my own subconscious where I am self-sabotaging and holding myself back from my own success. Maybe there is more to it than what I can see. So those are the kinds of people that I work with that I want in my world, that are seeing that there's more to it and that they have a growth mindset and they are willing to put their own ego aside and put their heads down and do the work and surrender to the mindset work. That is the kind of ideal client.
Perfect. And how can people find you?
Yeah. The best way to contact me is on Instagram. Just send me a DM there. It's very casual and you can just have a chat. If people want to read more about my programs, then they can go to my website. But the best way to learn from me is on my podcast, because there I go so much more in depth about these kinds of topics, and there's where people can get the most amount of value.
Perfect. And I think you're on your 50th episode. Is that right? Did I get that
It's a
right?
bit over 30, actually.
Oh, a bit over 30. Wow, I really
Yeah.
shot over that number and I didn't write it. I looked at my notes here. I didn't write that down. Uh-oh. Well,
No
thank you
problem.
so much, Diana. It was a great pleasure and I appreciate your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. I had a blast talking with you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
You too.
Thank you for joining us on the Free Time Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Robert Gaines. To support the channel, please click like, comment, subscribe, and share this episode. The book Scintilla, The Ultimate Guide to Generating Business Ideas, Products, and Services, is now available on Amazon. It's available as an ebook, softcover, and hardcover. Please find the link to the Amazon page in the description, as well as other links relevant to this episode.